welcome back to Troubleshooting Agile. Hi there, Jeffrey.
Hi, Squirrel.
So I think you have an update on our listener who asked us sort of a broad general question. I think you found out a little bit more, and we thought, gosh, we have some ideas about that.
That's right. Last time we talked about this. We had someone who was a first-time manager, and we said, well, we didn't know much about the context, so just assume it's sort of a standard business SaaS company. But in fact, now have more context. And what's happening is they're joining a consultancy, a smallish one, around 40 people.
Ooh,
Yeah.
boy, a consultancy.
And consultants are a bit different, and I thought that was something that we could talk about here about, some of the things that come up with consultancies. And in particular, as I thought about it, I know one of the topics that often comes up is the tension inside. Now, different consultancies operate differently, but one that I've often seen is you have people who are assisting the technical staff of a company. So the company has technologists, your client has technologists, they have an architecture or a platform, and you're supposed to be working within that framework where some technical context is given to you. And very often what I found is the consultants hate that. They hate the technical decisions being made by their clients. Not always, but that is certainly something that comes up commonly that's a bit different from a normal in-house SaaS. So I thought that might be something to talk about. Any thoughts come to mind for you, Squirrel?
Well, many thoughts as you heard me react to the news. This person works at a consultancy. I think there's more than we could fit in 100 podcasts that I could say about consultancies. I mean, the bad habits that I see former consultants and consultancies in the situation you're describing, where they're kind of providing an outsourced service, the habits they get into, the thinking they get into, is the many traps that affect consultancies. Is a rich seam, but let's mine just one piece of it, which is the part you're describing, where you think, I can't believe I have to work with these bozos, these idiots at this client. They're just demanding that I work with this technology or do this other wacky thing. And I remember thinking that. Way back at the beginning, myself, thinking about that at the beginning of my career, when the company that we eventually both worked at, but I was there much earlier, it functioned as a consultancy, and we would build software for our clients, and they would make dumb decisions. And, I think the thing that I didn't have empathy for, which I now do, having worked with a lot more such clients, many of which have made more boneheaded decisions than the ones I saw way back then. But there are good reasons why big organizations make dumb decisions, and good reasons why they hire consultants to help them with those. And what I would encourage our listener and any of our listeners who might be working in a consultancy or with a consultancy to think about is, your client has a whole lot of constraints that you are probably not aware of, and a whole lot of hoops to jump through and things to do that you and your much smaller, more nimble organization with a lot more freedom don't have. Of course, they have an awful lot of other things, such as a consistent source of income from a bunch of products. And you have to keep going and finding more people to consult with, so that you can help them make better decisions. But have a little empathy to start with, that your client has some advantages you don't have and some constraints you don't, and that some of their decisions with that context aren't so boneheaded. What do you think, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because one thing you're capturing here in like, I often find that the small consultants, a lot of times the people or consultants are technically very strong, and they're very often interested in the technology, and they kind of have self-selected into groups, maybe about particular technologies they especially like or have affinity with. And as you say, they're lacking the constraints.
And guess what? That's how they get hired, because they write about and they contribute to and they make big gains in, say, AI or cryptocurrency or something else that the client doesn't know much about. But then they read a blog post on LinkedIn and they say, yeah, great, let's hire these consultants. And then you get them in and you say, wait a minute. This doesn't fit. Why are these folks doing this way? They're doing it this way. This isn't how I wrote about it in my blog post.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I remember, some people saying like, this is not what the serverless book says, or something like that.
Exactly.
Certainly something I've come across. DevOps Agile, I can go back over years and heard complaints from my consultant friends about their clients. But the one thing you said here, and it struck me as really key, is you said these people have a lot of constraints or a lot of things that they're coming into, that your clients are coming with a lot of sort of baggage and intention. And often as the consultant, you don't know all of it. But of course, we talk all the time about what you should do, and you should be assuming that you don't know everything for the other side. And so what's needed here is some curiosity. But I think what can be very difficult to have that empathy for the client sometimes. And I've actually talked to consultant clients. I've been a consultant to consultancies and talked to their staff about how to talk to clients. And actually, I used one of our favorite models here, which is Xavier Amador, and his book "I'm Not Sick" and his LEAP method. And the reason I brought that up is I said, look, if two people, and in here you have a consultant and the client, and some technical staff at the client, and they're disagreeing.
I should note for listeners who might not have heard it, and we should put this in the show notes so you can go back and listen to some of our bits about it. Amador talks to people who are literally crazy. He talks to people who are schizophrenic, who believe the CIA is trying to bug their phones and listen in on their conversations using the toilet in their neighbor's room. I mean, he hears literally insane things. We just think we do. So say more about what he might have to help to say that would help consultants.
Well, here's the key thing. When he's talking to those actually insane people, he uses this phrase, which is anosognosia, which is the inability to know. The person who's schizophrenic can't be talked into acknowledging that they have schizophrenia. So what I advised the clients is, look, if you just can't understand how someone believes something, let's assume that one of you is wrong and one of you has anosognosia. If you're convinced that you're right, you are not going to be able to learn from the other person. So it's sort of well, how do we, if we feel like this, I'm not in a position of where I'm going to be learning, and they're not in a position where they're going to be learning. This model of LEAP is like, how do you function and work productively with someone where you think the other person's crazy? And that's kind of the framing that I used for it. And so the steps there are: listen, empathize, agree, and partner. And the
hardest one is agree, because the other guy's such a bonehead, or in Amador's case, is saying something that's so absolutely insane, that he's Jesus Christ or something, that it's very difficult to agree with that. But you can usually find some part of it that you can agree with. You are an important person, or yes, it's very frightening when you hear your neighbor's toilet flush because of these beliefs you have about the CIA. Those things are true, and you can agree about them. And what you're, I think, saying, Jeffrey, is find some things you can agree with your boneheaded Bozo clients on, and then listen to them very carefully, because you might learn something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You go in and listening, and then, as you say, even if you don't agree, you agree on what you can agree on as the plan, and then partner to make it happen. So, and the framing that I gave to the consultants is, I say, when you get into this kind of conflict with your clients, you're going to face a choice. You can either be right or you can be helpful. And that's they're kind of binary choices.
Yeah, being right also usually involves being poor, because your client will not improve and they will not continue to pay your nice high consulting fees. So you are much more likely to do better with the second option.
That's right. And so that's the thing that came to mind, the story that came to mind for me when I learned about this context of a consultancy, is this sort of this choice that you face, and that you're there to be helpful. And so that means going through the steps here of listening, empathizing from their point of view, working out an agreement. You don't need to believe that they're the smartest people, that they have the best plans, but you're going to find a constructive path forward, and that's the goal. And if you but and I think this can be really challenging, because those same people who got hired in the consultancy often got hired. They took the time to write their blog posts because they were convinced that there was a right way to do things, and they really want to do things right, and they want other people to know the right way and believe the right way. But when you start when your happiness starts depending on what other people believe about the world, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And that's the advice is about, you don't need to talk people into your worldview. You're there to say, how can we come to some sort of agreement and a workable plan, and then partner to make that happen. So that's my thought on the consultancy.
I like it, and I'll put it this way. Religions around the world, whether or not you believe in any particular one of them or not, have learned that if you expect everybody in your religion to be a saint who follows every rule perfectly, you will have a very small religion. And I think the same thing happens to us technologists. Is we sometimes decide that there's the one true pure way, and we should all be monks who follow the perfect path. We're going to get a lot farther if we find some folks who will sin slightly less, and they'll actually pay us pretty well to do that. So, Jeffrey, does that match up with your experience?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I can't wait to hear from some of our listeners, because I'm sure this is the kind of thing that, for some of them will seem totally obvious, and for some of them will seem completely mistaken and wrong-headed. Like it's your
Excellent.
job as the consultant to set them right. And I'd love to hear from people who have that view and how it's worked out for them. I think that's the question. Have you found it to be successful to go in and make them think the right things? I'd be very curious if people have a way to do that.
Excellent. As an active practicing consultant, I would sure like to know how to make people do the right things, because I have not, and 450 different clients, figured out how. But if our listeners have, we like hearing from you. And so we've been inspired by this listener twice now to do 2 different episodes. And you listened all the way to the end of this one, so you must have liked it. And we'd like to do more with the things that you have to say. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, find us on agileconversations.com. You'll find free blog posts. Hey, we write blog posts. We wrote a whole book. We have videos, other free, fun, exciting stuff. And you'll also find their email and Twitter and X and a Blue Sky and who knows what else. Lots of ways to get in touch with us. And we would sure like to hear from you for topics for future episodes. Of course, speaking of future episodes, another way to keep in touch is to come back again next week when there'll be another episode of Troubleshooting Agile. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Squirrel.